start with the name of God, the turner of hearts and the writer of destinies. Every ache that once visited your soul carried within it a secret assignment. Pain was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to train you. Like the fire that tempers the sword, your sorrow was shaping you into something unbreakable. You prayed for strength, and heaven answered, not with comfort, but with trials that demanded your courage to awaken. The darkness you walked through was not a detour, it was a sacred classroom. In every lonely night, every unanswered prayer, and every heartbreak that threatened to unravel you, something divine was being woven quietly behind the veil. You were being prepared for the weight of glory. For God does not give great crowns to untested heads. He allows pain to carve humility, to hollow out pride, to deepen compassion, and to teach endurance. Because the throne He is leading you toward requires a heart that has known both loss and love. You thought you were losing everything, yet heaven was stripping away only what could not go with you into your next season. The pain was not rejection, it was redirection. What broke you yesterday became the key that fits the lock of your promotion today. The wounds became windows where the light of grace could enter. You see, God hides elevation inside affliction, so that only the faithful can find it. The tears you shed were the water that softened the soil of your destiny, preparing it for growth. You did not walk through agony in vain. It was the language through which heaven whispered, I am making you ready. For every heartbreak was a chiseling, every disappointment a divine pruning, every loss a lesson whispered in the dialect of eternity. The hands that hurt were the same that healed, and in the breaking, something sacred was built inside you. A quiet resilience, a deep knowing that pain does not end the story, it begins the transformation. So when you look back, remember it was not the applause that promoted you, but the H that purified you. Pain was not your enemy, it was your usher, leading you gently, though fiercely, toward the very door you prayed would open. Start with the name of the one who mends what the world has shattered. There are seasons when the heart must be broken, not because it is weak, but because it has been holding too tightly to what cannot remain. Every crack in your soul became an entry point for light, for revelation, for renewal. When your heart broke, it wasn't the end of you. It was the unveiling of you. Sometimes, God allows what you love most to slip through your fingers, not to punish you, but to show you that your true calling was never meant to rest in human hands. The pain that crushed you became the doorway through which your real purpose walked in. There is a strange mercy hidden in heartbreak. It breaks illusions before they break you. When your plans collapsed, heaven was unfolding a design that could only emerge through surrender. You were asking for direction, and the detour was His answer. The very thing that made you question your worth was the instrument that refined your calling. For only those who have tasted the depth of sorrow can carry the depth of compassion. And purpose, you see, is born out of compassion, out of a heart that knows how to feel what others hide. God cannot send an unbroken vessel into a world that aches. He breaks to make you safe to carry His healing. When your dreams shattered, He was freeing you from smaller hopes, calling you into a destiny far greater than you had imagined. He does not waste pain, He repurposes it. Each tear watered the soil of your purpose. Each disappointment carved the wisdom that would later guide others. The breaking was not destruction, it was divine construction. For through pain, you discovered what truly matters. You learned to speak not from comfort, but from truth, not from theory, but from experience. The world does not need perfect hearts, it needs awakened ones. Hearts that have bled and still believe, hearts that have been broken and still choose love. So if your heart has been torn, understand it was not to end your story, but to begin the chapter where your purpose finally rises. Start with the name of the one who gives and takes away, yet never leaves empty the hands that trust Him. There are moments when heaven seems to close every door, when what you built with trembling faith crumbles before your eyes, and you stand amid the ruins asking, why? But divine promotion rarely comes wrapped in celebration, it arrives cloaked in endings. What feels like loss in the language of earth is often advancement in the language of heaven. God hides elevation inside surrender, because he knows that if you could see what he was doing, you would never learn to walk by faith. You thought you were being demoted when, in truth, you were being repositioned. The things you lost were not stolen. They were exchanged for something eternal. When he removed you from that place, that season, that relationship, it was not rejection, it was relocation. A seed must leave the sunlight and go into the dark soil before it can rise as a tree. So must you. The soil of obscurity was your promotion in disguise, the unseen proving ground where your roots grew deep enough to sustain the fruit that was coming. God cannot elevate what is still clinging to what was. He prunes not to harm, but to prepare. And though it hurt to watch certain doors close, those closures were not curses, they were compass points, guiding you to what your spirit was ready for but your flesh was resisting. The loss you mourned was actually a release, an untethering from what could not hold the weight of your calling. Sometimes, he must empty your hands before he can fill them. Sometimes, he must take you through the valley so you can handle the mountain. The demotion was never real. It was heaven's training ground for your unveiling. You were not being abandoned, you were being advanced. In every tear, there was a whisper from above. I am not taking from you. I am taking you somewhere. So when it all fell apart, remember, it wasn't falling apart, it was falling into place. The promotion had already begun, only it came wrapped in the disguise of loss. Start with the name of the one who refines like fire and appoints with wisdom. Every soul destined for greatness must first walk through the narrow gate of testing. It is not because God doubts you. It is because he loves you too deeply to let you rise unprepared. Heaven cannot place sacred assignments in untested hands. Before he gives you the promise, he must make sure your character can carry it. You prayed for influence, and he sent isolation. You asked for strength, and he sent storms. You desired wisdom, and he sent silence. For divine testing is not about proving your worth to God. It is about revealing to you what was always within you. Trials uncover the places that ease cannot reach. In the stillness of waiting, in the confusion of unanswered prayers, the soul is refined, the motives purified. He tests not to break, but to build. To trust you with glory, he must first watch how you handle pain. To crown you with honor, he must see how you respond to humility. When everything you depended on was stripped away, heaven was watching, not to judge, but to measure how deeply your roots went into faith. Because faith is not proven in abundance, it is proven in emptiness. The test is never about what you lose, but about what remains when everything else fades. He delays not to punish, but to develop. You cannot carry a destiny that has not been tested in fire, for untested faith cannot sustain divine favor. Every test you endured was heaven's way of saying, I am preparing to trust you with more. Each closed door, each disappointment, each lonely night was a question whispered from above. Will you still believe when there is nothing left to see? And when you did, when you kept walking through the valley, still holding his hand, still choosing to love, still refusing to turn away, you passed. Heaven saw, and heaven marked you ready. For the promotion you prayed for could not come until the foundation of your soul was proven unshakable. Testing was not punishment, it was confirmation. The fire you survived was heaven's signature upon your name, saying, this one can be trusted with the light. Start with the name of the one who speaks even through silence, whose quiet is not absence but artistry. There were seasons when you cried out and heaven seemed to withhold its voice. You prayed, and the sky stayed still. You searched for answers, yet none came. You thought perhaps he had turned his face away, that your prayers had been misplaced in eternity's chambers. But silence was never his rejection. It was his workshop. While you thought nothing was happening, everything was being formed. The silence of God is not empty. It is full of unseen motion. It is the pause before the unveiling, the stillness before dawn. In that sacred quiet, he was molding your heart, sharpening your discernment, deepening your faith beyond the need for constant reassurance. when he stopped speaking, it was not because he had nothing to say. It was because he wanted you to learn the language of trust. The teacher is always silent during the test, and your test was never about his presence. It was about your perception. Could you still believe in the promise when you couldn't hear the promiser? Could you still walk forward in the dark, believing the hand that led you in would not abandon you there? That silence was where your roots went deep, where you learned to walk by faith and not by sight. You discovered that faith is not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep moving through it. And in the quiet, something sacred grew, a strength that was not borrowed from miracles, but born from intimacy. You began to see that his silence was not a void, but a voice too holy to be wrapped in words. It was the sound of your becoming, the rhythm of transformation beating beneath your pain. He was teaching you to rest in his nature, not just his answers. For silence is how heaven sanctifies the heart, by removing every other sound until only his truth remains. And when the time was right, when your soul had learned to breathe peace in the unknown, his voice returned. Not as thunder, but as stillness that whispered. You were never alone. The silence was not delay, it was design. You were not being ignored, you were being remade. Start with the name of the one who turns wounds into wisdom and ashes into altars. There was a time when you looked at your scars and only saw the story of what was lost. The betrayal, the disappointment, the nights when tears became your only prayer. But those marks upon your heart were never symbols of defeat. They were the evidence of survival. They are the fingerprints of grace upon your life, quiet witnesses that you were struck down but not destroyed. Pain tried to define you, yet grace rewrote your name. You see, every scar is a testimony that something tried to end you and failed. The enemy thought the wound would silence you, but instead, it refined your voice. You began to speak not from theory, but from truth carved into your soul. Scars do not make you less. They make you real, approachable, and beautifully human. They remind the world that resurrection still happens, not in the absence of pain, but through it. God allowed those wounds not to shame you, but to shape you into someone who could carry compassion without judgment, strength without pride, and love without fear. Grace took the fragments of your brokenness and built a foundation stronger than your unbroken days ever could. It taught you endurance, patience, and the quiet courage to stand again after everything fell apart. The scar is the proof that healing happened, that grace entered where pain once reigned. Do not hide them. They are your credentials in the kingdom of endurance. The world crowns beauty untouched by struggle, but heaven crowns the wounded who still choose to love. You are not damaged. You are divine craftsmanship, rebuilt with mercy as mortar. What pain could not destroy, grace redeemed. So when you trace the lines of your scars, remember, they are not the end of your story. They are the signature of the author who finished it with glory. For every mark is a memorial of victory, a quiet proclamation that grace, not pain, had the final word.